good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our session this afternoon. So glad to have everyone on our workshop. So I hope you're excited to learn a little bit more about creating amazing presentations with Keynote, right? So if you're just joining us for the first time, or maybe you know already, but iStore Meets, of course, is brought to you by the iStore. And we have a whole lineup of workshops. So these are delivered by our best product trainers and industry experts to help you learn more about the products you love, so you can connect, you can create, you can get fit, and also you can be more productive. So the iStore Meets program covers a variety of topics to help you now and also in the future with things like fitness, productivity, education, creativity, and a whole lot more. So these are hosted online now, so thank you for joining, but also in our stores. So please look out at your closest iStore in the future. In the meantime, please go and make a booking on myistore.co.za/meets. It's also an interactive session, so we'd really like to chat to you today. So do say hello in the chat line. Tell us where you are joining from. It's always nice to know where people are joining from. So let us know where you're at today. Hopefully it's cold, well, not cold, it's warm. Where you are, it's actually quite cold here today. So I can see a lot of people saying hello already from Johannesburg, lots of people from Joburg, Midrand, Pretoria, all over the place. So welcome everybody. So yeah, you can use the chat line throughout the session. And then also there's a Q&A option. So please make sure you use the Q&A option for any particular questions you have. And then our team is going to try and get to all your questions. So yeah, lastly, we also have a monthly competition. So you could win a 1,500 Rand iStore gift card. So to enter, please post a picture of your home setup, maybe while you're watching this workshop today, or maybe an iPhone picture that you've taken, or maybe even a sketch on an iPad, right? So post these to Facebook and Instagram using the hashtag iStore Meets, and you can be in line to win a prize. Just keep in mind that Facebook stories and Instagram stories, unfortunately, will not be entered into the draw. Okay, so now we are almost ready to go. So I'll turn on my video in a second. And obviously here we are today learning how to create amazing presentations with Keynote, right? So I'm going to jump out of my presentation quickly so we can all jump into this together. So here we go. Let me just jump out. There we go. Hopefully seeing my screen already. And also let me turn on my camera so you can see me as well. Hello everybody. My name is Marius. So glad to have you on the session this afternoon. And I must say, I'm quite excited to take you through some cool features of Keynote to help you to deliver amazing presentations. I think it's one of those tools that everyone should be using. And essentially it's for free, right? So if you have a Mac already, that's great, you have this already. Even if you have an iPhone or an iPad, you will have Keynote on your system. So I'm just looking at the chat. I'm going to keep my eye on the Q&A also. So yeah, like we said, definitely post your questions there, and we'll be happy to try and help you. So for today's session, we thought it'd be a good idea to have a bit of a theme. So our theme for today is Brazil, right? So every good presentation is going to have a nice theme. So in this case, we are traveling to Brazil. I know there's no traveling at the moment, but we thought, why not use our imaginations a little bit? Once lockdown is over, we can think about things like, travel again. So destination is Brazil. And I think we'll start maybe just with a quick overview of the interface. So if you guys are familiar with Keynote, then this might not be new to you, but for anyone that is new to Keynote, let's just quickly, before we jump in, make sure you understand what you see on your screen at the moment. So if you look towards the top, we have the toolbar, and this is where you'll find all kinds of shortcuts, and we'll be making use of a lot of these today. On the left-hand side, we've got our slide overview. You can see we've got a whole bunch of slides in here already. One or two things to note maybe on the side is firstly on the way on the left-hand side, you can see I can also adjust how I view my slides. So at the moment I'm on the navigator view, which is probably the one that you're going to use most of the time. But also you can do things like a light table, which gives you a nice overview of everything and even an outline, right? To make sure you can see exactly how your presentation is structured. So that is going to be on the left and also on the top. If you go all the way to the right-hand side, you will see we have a few different palettes, right? So we got our format palette, we got our animation palette, and also we got our document inspectors. So I think we'll jump into these from time to time. So we'll probably get to know them quite a bit. So I guess the important thing to start with in terms of a presentation is to have a good structure. You want to build a presentation that has a good beginning, almost like a book. Think about it, right? And some meat in terms of the middle, the content, and also then a good and striking end so that your audience can really be captured with your presentation. And Keynote has got all the tools to kind of help you make an awesome presentation. So I think one of the first things probably that most of you would know about Keynote is it's got some really awesome themes built in, right? So as you can see, there's a whole bunch of themes, and especially if you update it to the new version of Keynote. So there's a new version came out not too long ago, version 10, and this one included some new additional themes. So if you make a new presentation, I just wanted to highlight maybe one or two things that's important to know. Firstly, you'll see there are really some awesome themes, and you can choose to have something maybe bold and striking, or maybe something more classical, right? Or maybe something that's minimal, that's just got some good slides for you to start off with. One of the key things though to maybe just look at right from the start is also your aspect ratio. So if you look to the right of that window, you'll see I can choose either from a wide or to a standard. So wide is probably a better one to go with these days. In terms of most new TVs, most projectors, pretty much any way you're going to present on is going to have this aspect ratio. If you go with the standard one, which quite often is the default, you might see that your presentation is looking a little bit boxed in on a new and a wider display. So now that we know a little bit about themes, and the theme we're using today, just so you know, is this one here called color gradient, right? So this is the theme we'll be using in our presentation, our sample for the day. So let me close that, and we want to actually move along, and we want to talk about a few things in terms of making a great presentation. So I see someone is asking, how do we get to themes? Adrian, essentially, you can go to the file menu and just click on new, and that should bring up the theme chooser. Just simple as that, right? So it should actually pop up every time you make a new presentation. But let's talk about text, right? Because text is obviously a big part of any presentation because you want information to be on that presentation. So a couple of things for us to talk about here is, I guess, the text size, right? Really what is important is less is more. So you don't want to put too much on there. You want to make the size of the text nice and readable. And also your font. You want something that is not too cursive, right? Just to make sure that it's very readable and someone doesn't have a hard time reading your text. A couple of design elements I think which is important to consider is also consistency. So for instance, thinking about the colors that you use, the palettes that you use, right? The fonts, and also that your whole slideshow throughout from the start to the end is kind of consistent in terms of what you're using around fonts, etc. So why don't we make a couple of changes on the slide to see if we can maybe jazz it up a little bit, right? The first thing I want to kind of bring to your attention is, you can see right on the top it says destination, and we've got a nice color gradient going on there. But a nice thing about Keynote is also you can incorporate colors from other elements, right? So again, talking about consistency, what's quite nice actually if you're using colors from other objects, maybe images, or in this case, the Brazilian flag, just to again make your presentation more consistent. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to change that destination gradient to be a similar gradient in terms of colors to the Brazilian flag. So you can see on the bottom, there's a little Brazilian flag. It's obviously got a nice green, a nice punchy yellow. So let's use this to actually also be in our presentation. So how do we do this? Okay, so in this case, I'm going to go to the right-hand side, And I'm going to open my format panel if it wasn't open already. And you can see I've got a whole bunch of options here, right? Nice thing about Keynote also, as you tap on different things, it will change what is displayed on your or in your format panel. So I'm going to click on the text option here. And you can see here is where I can see the gradient, which is from that kind of a neon green to a nice blue. But I actually want to use the colors of the flag in that text, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to tap on the little color wheel next to the green. And you can see I can choose my colors, right? So I can go ahead and choose any color I want, essentially, right? There's so many colors, obviously the whole wheel is right there available for me. But what I want is a specific color. So what I can do here, if you look at the bottom of that little section, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. You'll see there's a little eyedropper, right? So what's good about this, I can then sample the color. So in this case, I'm going to sample, and I'm just going to move my mouse over to the flag, and you can see I can actually choose the green from the flag. You can see how that text has already changed to that same green, right? Do the same with the other colors. So I'm going to change that blue to the yellow from the flag. So let me do that. Click on the sample little eyedropper one more time. Move down to the yellow of the flag. You can see I've got a nice gradient now from green to yellow, which actually matches the flag of Brazil, right? So again, nice consistency in terms of my presentation. So let me close that down quickly for a second. Now that I've got that, also we want to make your life easier, right? So you don't want to be redoing this on every single slide. So for instance, if I go to the next slide, you can see it's still got the old colors, right? So the old colors, I don't know, I don't want to be doing this on every single slide. So here's something I want to show you, which I think a lot of people don't know about Keynote, is that you can have something called paragraph styles. So check this out. If I tap on the destination one I just changed colors for, and I go all the way to the right side again, under the text menu, see it says section, and it says update. So essentially what we're looking at here is paragraph styles. And it's a good idea to be using these throughout your presentation. So if you make a change in one place, you can apply that same change throughout your presentation. So all I'm going to do in this case, because I'm using a paragraph style already called section, I'm going to just click on update. And I want you to see what happens when I click on update. So there we go. I click on update, and it doesn't look like anything's happened, right? But if I go to my other slides now, let me actually go back to the next one again. You can see how it now already applied that same formatting to the rest of my presentation. So a really easy way to make sure, again, you get that consistency throughout your presentation. You see, I think Garth is asking there about, can you have more than just the two colors in a gradient? You've got a few options there, Garth, actually. So if I go back to that one, you can see I've got gradient fill at the moment as an option. I can also go to one that's called advanced gradient fill. So this one gives you more options. You can add more colors. And you can also change in terms of where the kind of where the transition happens. Is it maybe more to the green side, more to the yellow side? So definitely something to go and check out, Garth. So yeah, we've changed that. Maybe also let's change the font here for Brazil, and we take maybe, because this one we want a little bit more striking, we're going to change the font. Again, on the right-hand side, I can choose all kinds of fonts, and I can preview pretty much everything that's installed on my Mac. So again, we're trying to avoid something that's too cursive, right? So let's go with the one that I quite like, is this one, Herculean, because it looks like a bit of a, I know, Brazilian, like a jungle theme, right? And I'm going to do one more thing on this, is I'm going to change that also to the same yellow as the flag. So let me do that as well. The same way we did it before. Click on the text color options, click on the eyedropper, and choose that same yellow. And you can see now we've got a nice and striking Brazil. And also we've got some text at the bottom. Right. So I also want to introduce you quickly before we move along to talking about images, which I think is quite exciting. I want to talk about also animations. So if you wanted to, for instance, get this word Brazil to appear in a very striking way on your presentation, Keynote has got some awesome ways to do this, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the word Brazil. And this time, if I go to the right-hand side, I'm looking at the format options at the moment. But the next one right next to it is called the animation palette, right? So this is where I can make all kinds of animation changes to my presentation. So let me see what I got there. I'm going to click on that. You can see I've got three options here. I've got built in, essentially the way things appear on the slide. I've got action, which is one of the ones we'll look at a little bit later, and we've also got build out, which is the way things then disappear, right? In this case, let's try something nice with a build in. I'm going to choose an effect, so I'm click on add effect. And one that I quite like, and let's try this one, it's called trace. So as soon as I click on preview, there we go. Hopefully you've seen it on your side as well. Let me preview that one more time. How nice is that, right? So I can actually, if I want to apply that, I just click on the word, and there we go. We've applied that to our presentation. So using builds and animations is a nice part of Keynote because it's got some really cinematic ones. Maybe try not to use them too often, right? We want to actually keep it simple. Again, like we said earlier, less is more in most cases with presentations. So I think if there's any brand guidelines, you want to try and stick to those, right? So color-wise, palettes, fonts, and these things. But as a start, hopefully that gives you an idea in terms of maybe some text options. If I select this box of text at the bottom, and I go back to my format options, you can see actually we have a whole host of options here, like we'd find in most word processors. Fonts, kerning, spacing, all kinds of options in terms of their alignment. So for most of you, this should look quite familiar, and Keynote obviously supports most of the basic things you want to do with your fonts. So, yeah, I think let's move along. We are obviously going to add more text as we go along, but I really want to move on to images, right? Because it's so nice in terms of how you can actually make a presentation come to life by using less text and more images, right? So think about, for instance, rather than writing out what you're trying to say on a presentation, just by using an image to almost portray that. So for instance, I'm talking about forests. What about if we add a nice big picture of a forest here to make it nice and striking? So in this case, I've actually downloaded some already. So let me quickly go and find them. Oh, hold on. I think I just logged out there for a second. Let me go to my Finder, and I'm quickly going to find this on my computer. So under iCloud Drive, I've saved a few things here. But let me find it here. I think it is right over here. There we go. And let me view it in a different way. So obviously you can add media from your computer quite easily. In this case, I've got a folder with a couple of images. In a second, we'll also look at maybe importing some images from the web. But here I've got a nice big image of a forest. I'm simply going to drag it onto my presentation. You can see in a second, there we go, right? I've got a nice forest on there. So as you can see, it's quite nice, but also it's kind of sitting on top of everything, right? So, so let us actually do something about that. So one thing I want to talk to you about is firstly layering. So this is sitting right on top. So actually I want to move it back towards the back. So how would I change that? Again, if I go to my inspector, you can see there's one that says arrange, and I actually can move that one all the way to the back, right? So I'm just going to simply click on back. You can see now it's all the way to the back of my slide stack, as it were. And then also I can, let's see, actually increase the size there. So I'm actually going to just click on that edge and just drag outwards. Here's maybe a little tip, and this is a nice one. So if I just drag on that, you can see actually it will drag towards the side that I'm dragging, right? So maybe that's what I wanted, but if I wanted to actually drag it from the center, what you can use on your Mac is you can use the Option key and just hold that down while you're dragging. And there we go. There we go. I think someone is actually quite right. Is forest actually spelled like that, or with 2 R's? Let's see. Anyway, we can always fix that later. So, so we're talking about maybe using image, right? So there's a few more things we can do here. You can see already the text is maybe, I don't know, it's not standing out that much because the background is quite bright, right? So what I can do here is I can do a few things. I can actually take the image again, select it simply. And this time if I go to the style menu, I can bring down the opacity. So I'm just going to make it like a bit of a, let's say I was taking, this photo was taken maybe not so much in the mid sunlight of 12 o'clock day, but maybe, you know, I don't know, maybe when it was slightly darker. You can see how the text already stands out a bit more. But there's one or two more things that's really exciting I want to show you. Let's go back to my folder, which I had some images on. And this time I'm going to drag another image on of a bird, right? Because let's say we want to show maybe the forest and also there's a bird on there. So I'm actually going to drag this image of a bird onto my presentation as well. Awesome, right? So I've got this bird, but it's not quite working because I've got all these other birds and it's kind of on a blue sky. It's not quite looking like it's in a forest. So let's see how we can fix this also in Keynote. So this is one of the cool things about Keynote. I don't have to actually jump into something like Photoshop here to make these adjustments. I can do these directly in Keynote. So, so someone is asking, where do I click to find these images? I had them saved locally on my computer. So I can do this a few ways. I can actually go into the insert menu and I can then say choose, right? Which allows me to choose images. But in my case, I just had the folder open as a finder window and I can simply just drag them in as well. So let's see what we can do with this bird. So essentially we want to take out all the rest of the image and just keep the nice image of the parrot. So firstly, if I just double click on the image, you can see I can start cropping, right? So all I do is I double click on the image. Let me show you one more time. Double click the image, and then I can simply just drag up from the bottom, drag up from the side, drag up from essentially all the sides. And I've got already a little bit more of a cropped image, right? So that's better, but it's not quite there. You'd agree, right? Birds don't usually fly around in little boxes of sky, especially in the forest. So what can we do here? I'm going to click on the bird one more time. And this time I'm going to use my options in Keynote. You'll see there's one that says image right next to style. And this is probably one of those things that I use, I don't know, like every single presentation. When I'm using images, I'm using this option called Instant Alpha. So quickly maybe raise your hand in the chat line if you've used this option before, because I think some of you might be familiar with this already. I see a whole bunch of you raising your hands. For those who have not seen this, let me show you how awesome this is. So literally I have the image selected. I click on Instant Alpha. And now what I can do is I can actually remove the background image or the background color, right? So this works better like with consistent colors like a sky, or something that is more, I think, evenly spread, like a single color. So I'm simply going to click and drag, and you can see as I'm dragging, I'm actually setting the radius in terms of how much of the blue I want to remove. So I'm going to keep on going, and I'm just going to keep an eye on the bird to make sure I'm not clipping into the bird. Because if I'm dragging too much, let me actually just overdo it for a little bit. You can see how the whole image then turns kind of, orangey. So what you want to do is you want to actually just drag it to the point where you get the whole bird nicely and colorful, but no spillage coming in from the clipping in terms of my Instant Alpha. That looks good. If I let go and I click on done, essentially you see I've got a bird, right? That looks like it's flying through the forest. So how awesome is that? This is all done in Keynote. Again, no jumping to Photoshop or anything. So obviously we can animate the bird to make it fly across the forest, right? That's something we might do. But before we do that, I also want to do something else. Actually, I want to change maybe a little bit of the, maybe some of the image adjustments. It looks like the bird is also quite bright, right? So maybe this bird was shot in like a bright scene again. So I'm going to bring down the exposure on the bird a little bit, right? You can see how it looks a little bit more like it's actually flying in the forest at the same time. So how did I get that? I simply click on the bird. And if you have a look on the right-hand side, you'll see there's a little adjustment option. It looks like a couple of controls, right? So if you click on that simply, it opens up a little inspector and you can change things like exposure, contrast, highlights to kind of make the bird stand out. Maybe in this case, just to fade it a little bit into the background. So that's quite nice. I like that. But let me introduce you to something else, which I think is really going to blow your mind. What I want is to have some movement on the slide, right? So how do we do that? I can either move the bird, or maybe think about this, I can move the forest, right? So it looks like the bird is flying. So let me show you this. I'm just going to make my slide a little bit smaller so I can see more. And here we go. I'm actually going to just increase the size of my background so I've got some room to play with, right? So there we go. I've got a large forest here. There we go. Right, so essentially what I want to do is I actually want to move the forest in the background. So have a look on the bird. If I can do that, can you see it looks like the bird's flying, right? So I'm going to actually make a motion background. So how do I do this? I literally have to choose my starting point. So let's put it on that side. So I'm just changing my background. I'm just moving around. And this time I'll go back to my animation palette. And this one time I'm going to choose something called action, right? So not build in, not build out, but action. So have a look at this. I say add an effect, and I'm going to choose the one that says move, because I'm going to move the background. So let me choose that one. So I did like a little move, but I think we want more of a large move, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag on that little point that was just created. So that's kind of much the starting point on the left-hand side and the ending point on that side. I'm just going to drag that and kind of move it all the way to the other side. So it actually makes a nice and a big move, right? And essentially also I'm going to change the duration. You can see at the moment it's 1 second, like our bird is not flying that fast. So maybe I'm just going to increase that maybe to maybe like, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 seconds. So let me preview this and you can see what this looks like now. There we go. So essentially I've got a moving background and it looks like my bird is flying through the sky. In this case, there was acceleration. I can turn this off, right? Because essentially the bird is going to be flying at the same speed. So you'll see there's an option there that says acceleration. I'm just going to choose none there and preview this one more time so everyone can see how this looks. There we go. The bird is flying through the sky. So what you can do potentially is even bring down opacity a little bit more of the background, because you don't want it to be, I think, distracting, right? But you just want to introduce maybe some elements where there's some movement and something that's interesting, just to make your slideshow again, stand out, I guess, from the rest. Let me show you one more thing in terms of working with images, and then we'll move along. So and I hope that makes sense in terms of what we just did. So let me quickly see. I'm going to go to a second slide, which again is named forests, and let's use that same image. I'm going to quickly go to my Finder and bring in that same image of the forest, right? And this time I'm going to introduce you to something else, which I think is also really awesome. So let me make it a bit bigger. And I'm going to move it to the back. So remember, we go to the Format panel, Arrange, and I'm going to send it to the back. This time I don't want to use the whole image. Maybe I just want to use a part of the image, right? So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to mask the image with a shape. So how do we do this? So essentially, let me make it a little bigger so we can see more here. Let's say I had a shape on the screen, and I'm just going to use an example quickly of something like I don't know, like something like a star or a square. So I go to the top where it says shapes. I'm going to add, let's say, a star, right? So if I have a star, in this case, a shape, and an image on the same slide, what I can do is I can select them both, right? So how do we do both of them? I click on the star, I hold down the Shift key, and then I click on the background. So essentially I've selected both. So what I can do now, if I go to the menus, I can say Format. I want to make a format change here for the image, right? And you can see there's an option that says Mask with Selection. So how cool is this? I can then actually have the image of the forest live within that little star shape, right? And obviously you can change this. You can make it bigger and smaller any way you like. In this case, I don't think it makes sense to have a star of a forest, right? I want to do something else. I just wanted to show you how that works, because now we're going to take it up a level again. So I'm going to undo that. Let me just quickly undo that. And I'm going to get rid of the star. And I am going to this time use another tool, which is the pen tool. So have a look at this. I'm going to go to my object or my shape button at the top, the one that has got a little green square in it. Yeah. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to this time not choose a shape from the list here. I am going to click on the one on the top right there, which looks like a little pen tool. I hope everyone can see that. So a little pen tool, it says draw with a pen tool. So as soon as I click on that, essentially I can then draw my own shape, right? So how awesome is this? So in this case, I'm going to draw, let's say I want to follow this line of the tree right over here in the middle. So firstly, a quick lesson in using the pen tools. If I click and I just click again and I click again, I'm going to make essentially straight lines, right? Which is fine, but again, the forest doesn't have straight lines necessarily like that. So what we're going to do rather is we're going to click and drag to make a curved line. So let me do this one more time and go to the Shapes tools, click on my little pen icon, and essentially I am going to follow the shape of the tree. So I'm going to click on the tree, at the top, drag. I'm making a curved line at the moment. Drag again up to the point maybe where this little branch comes out. And maybe let's actually just zoom in there so we can see more of what's happening. So I'm drawing a shape, right? So this time I'm going to draw, let's say, around the edge of this little piece, like so. And as you can see, as I click and drag, I make curved lines, right? So that is actually what I need to do in this case. So let me go out a little bit and follow the rest of the tree. Let's say just to outside of the frame. And now I can complete, because for this to work, you need to have a, let's say, a closed shape, right? You can't have open-ended shape. So you need to always go back to your first point. And in this case, I've made a shape, which is actually exactly following the tree, right? So now let's do the same thing we did with the star. Now I'm going to click on the shape, click on the background by pressing Shift to make sure I've got both selected. And now look, if I do the same option one more time, Format, Images, Mask with Selection, and I click Undone, you can see now we've got a very nice cutout of the tree, right? Of the left-hand side of the forest. I can actually scale this up even and make it a little bit bigger, right? So how cool is that, right? You can do some really awesome things in terms of making your images really stand out. In this case, maybe what we can do is go back to our previous slide, maybe copy that text, maybe just it's just like an alternative version of the same thing. In this case, we can go to our slide here where we had cut out the tree, paste our text one more time, and maybe we put it on the right-hand side here, just to kind of have it show like that, right? So you can see how easy it is to do amazing things with images, right? So we were doing things like motion, doing a motion of the background, right? We cut out the parrot in terms of using Instant Alpha. In this case, we cut out a part of the tree using a shape. So, so yeah, it's something you might want to practice a little bit in terms of using those shapes, because you need to click and drag. If you drag too much, right, you can see your shape sometimes goes a bit wonky. But it's something just to play with, and you'll quickly get the hang of it. I mean, what else we can do? We can actually have this text come out from behind the trees, right? So let me do that real quick. I'm going to have the text, and I'm going to put it, let's say, over here as a start. And let's do the same thing we did earlier on in terms of an action. Add some motion, right? So I'm going to do a move. I'm just going to make that move a little bit further on so it actually arrives there. Okay, so if I now just have that text, it's obviously on top of the trees. If I move it just back again, so I'm going to go back to my format panel and say back. And this time, if I preview this, let me quickly show you what this will look like. The text will arrive from behind the trees, right? So there's so many options to do amazing things on your presentation. Let me preview this one more time. You can see, there we go. Text is coming in from behind the trees, right? Some of you are asking in terms of, can you do this on the iPad Pro? So actually, most of what we're doing here is available on iPad, iPad Pro included. And actually, also on iPhone, right? You'd actually be amazed what you can do with Keynote on an iPhone. Obviously, the screen is a bit smaller, so maybe it's not that easy to navigate around all the options. But definitely most of what we're doing here is doable on an iPad as well. So how crazy is that? Right. So so let's move along, because we're talking about using images. We did a motion background, right? As we go to our next slide, I want to introduce you to something new, though. I want to introduce you to slide transitions. So what we've seen up to this point was things happening on a slide, right? So we had the text appear, we had the trees move in the background, we had that Brazil, that very first sentence we had that kind of animate in quite nicely. But now I want to talk about going between slides, not just on a slide. So, so let's try something here. I'm going to have the slide selected. So for this to work, a little bit different from using animation effects on objects, you have to have nothing selected except the slide. So make sure you select the slide on your slide list on the left. And this time when I say add effect, you can see now it's got a few different options here, right? Because it's doing a slide transition essentially. And yeah, there's so many we can do. We can do, let's say, confetti, right? I can preview that. And it's going to go like a nice confetti from the one slide to the next clothesline, right? So again, you can go and check these out. I suggest, again, you kind of use a bit of, I think, simplicity. You don't want to be too overboard in terms of the animations you use. But I want to show you one. If I go down to the bottom, you'll see there's all the normal ones, and these are the ones we know, right? There's like mosaic. That's quite a nice one. It's going to like flip over. But if you look towards the bottom of that list, you'll see it says object effects. So how cool is this? Actually going to use the objects on the slide, and it's going to use them in the transition to the next slide. So let me do one. The one I quite like here is the one called object push. So let me preview that. You can see the tree is going to fade away, and also the objects from the next slide is almost going to slide in very eloquently. So I really like that. So let's choose object push. There we go. I like that. And let's move along, because I also want to talk about maybe getting images from other places. So we had imported a couple from our Mac, that's fine. But the important thing about making representation is that you want to use images that is high resolution and not pixelated and of good quality. So I don't know, where would most of you go if you do that? You probably do a Google search, you find some random images, right? So firstly, there might be some copyright issues there, because you're just finding a random image on Google doesn't mean you have the rights to use it, right? So I want to show you where we go to find some of our images. So I'm quickly open up my browser. And there's a cool site. There's actually a few. This is the one that I particularly like, but definitely go and bookmark this one. It's called Unsplash. Right, if you go to unsplash.com. So what's different about this one, it's stock images, right? So it's like professional quality type images. But if you can see, it is freely usable. So some of these other stock images sites, you have to pay, right? And if you find the right image, obviously it's worth paying for, and that's not a problem. And in this case, we just want to use a couple of images from this particular site. So let me go and do a search for something like Brazil, right? You can see it finds, there we go, all kinds of images that I can use. And you can see these don't have watermarks on it, right? A lot of the times you'll find those images, it's got those watermarks on it. That's probably one of the last things you want to do, is use a presentation in a professional setting and have an image with a watermark, right? Obviously, it is not a great idea. So let me show you how this works from the web. Simply, I'm going to choose an image. Let's go with this one here. I quite like this one on the right-hand side. I'm just going to click and drag. Right, you can see I'm just dragging, and I'm going to go over to my Keynote, just hover there for a second, and I can literally drop it into one of these image placeholders, right? You can see there we go, we've got that image on my presentation. If I double click, like we did before, I can readjust it just to make it stand out slightly better. There we go. So when using images on the web, and I think a lot of you will do this quite often, I think it's good to use good quality images, like we said. Find something maybe that is royalty free, like these ones, or if there's a specific image you want on another site, obviously feel free. Things like iStock, those are good places to go. Let me also maybe have a nice image there of the forest one more time. So I'm literally just dragging from the web straight into Keynote, right? And why is this convenient? I don't have to go and save it first and then find it and then drag it to my presentation. Actually go straight from the internet onto my presentation. So yeah, I think we've got some images there. We've got the forest. We've got like 2 versions of that, and we can maybe choose which one we want to use. And then we've got maybe some more images in terms of just showing maybe some great scenic photos of Brazil, right? Because remember, that's what we're trying to do here, is we want to have a destination. Imagine we are a travel agency and we are doing a presentation about going to Brazil. So let's move along, because there's a few more things I want to chat about. Because from time to time, maybe, and I hope everyone's still following, maybe quickly give me an update in the chat line if you're still following and you're still fine. Maybe you can raise your hand if you're okay. Then there we go. Lots of hands being raised. Oh my goodness. Okay, so thank you for all the hands raised. What you don't know, if you raise your hands, it actually fills up my screen with all these little boxes, right? So for a moment, I actually can't see what's happening. Anyway, so it's glad that everyone is still okay. I see there's a couple of questions in terms of inserting a video clip. So essentially, Robin, you do it exactly the same way. So if you had a video clip instead of a photo, you just drop it onto your slide. And essentially, when you play back your presentation on that slide, it'll play back the video. You've also got some controls in terms of maybe starting it straight away, or maybe only playing when you press the spacebar. But definitely videos will work just as well. And then if you want to use a video from YouTube, because I think that's also something that people use quite often, there's also some great little some ways to do that. And I think maybe some of my colleagues in the chat line can maybe let you know how to download a video from YouTube using, there's a couple of sites that allow you to do that. So, so let's talk about tables, right? Sometimes you want to show information. It's maybe not the most exciting thing, right? So like a table, but it's important because we want to see maybe in terms of, I don't know, what was the, I don't know, number of people in the city that visited from South Africa, let's say, in those months, in those different cities, right? So maybe you want to display that on the table. So what I want to just quickly show you here is firstly, inserting a table is quite simple. So on the top, I can insert a table. You can see there's all the different options and I can choose different colors and different themes. So I've got one on there already, so we're not going to insert a new one, but you can then obviously start entering the data. But what I want to show you here is also how easy it is to do little things like formulas. So let's say I want to actually add up how many people visited Brazil, Sao Paulo in this case, in April, May, and June, right? So what I can do simply, I go to that last column over there, and I just double click on it to have an insertion point. And I simply press the equal sign. And you can see it brings up a little function inspector, right? I can click on there and I can say convert or show as text. But for now, I just actually want to insert, let's say, a sum of those three things. So how simple is this, guys? All you do is I just have my little function ready for me, and I just click on the ones I want to do. There we go. And I just drag the three cells I want to include into my formula. You can see there, I did it. And also it's doing a sum at this time. Also, you can change that, right? So let's say you want to see all the different options available. I can say show in function browser. You can see now it'll show me all the different ones available. And literally there are, I don't know, hundreds, maybe thousands even. So if anyone is really big on Excel, right, you'll know some of these because I'm sure they'll be familiar with things like, I don't know, interests and currency and whatnot. The point is you can do all this in Keynote, right? How awesome is this? You can do very complex calculations and functions in Keynote. So let me just press on the green button to apply that. And once I've got one row selected in terms of, I know that is working in terms of adding up the total. If I wanted to do the rest of them, simply what I need to do is just copy that, that cell with the formula, and I can just paste it in the rest. Or if you look on your screen, there's a little yellow box, and all I need to do is just drag that down, which means I'm going to apply that same formula to the rest of the rows, essentially. So someone is asking about unsplash.com. That was just literally a website. If you head over to your browser, you should be able to go to unsplash.com, and you should see it just there on the web, right? So I hope that helps. So, so quickly I want to show how easy it is to work with tables, you know, because obviously that is quite often what someone needs to do is show information, and Keynote can do that really well. Again, you can change the colors. In this case, you can see we're still being quite consistent in terms of our use of colors, right? We're using that same yellow from the flag and that same green from the flag. You can maybe mute it a bit, right? So you can use the same colors, maybe just like a slightly muted version, like a, let's say a 50% opacity of the yellow to still be that same yellow, but maybe not as striking. You know, that's maybe an additional thing that you can do. So now that we're talking about tables, I guess we need to quickly talk about charts, right? Because maybe you want to display the information in a slightly more presentable way. Tables are nice, but charts are so much more striking, right? So how do we do a chart? Quite simply, I'm going to go to my toolbar again on the top. You'll see there's a chart icon, like a 3 little blue dots over there. And simply, I just tap on that to get my options. You can see I got 2D options, 3D options, also interactive. So let me show you real quick when you maybe insert a 3D chart, because Keynote, again, in the way it presents things are just like so well made, right? So let's have this in here. We can adjust maybe the size. So let's make it slightly taller. Maybe just have it fit exactly where we want it. And I can now also actually, if I click and hold on that center part, which looks like a couple of circles spinning in 3D, right? If I just click and hold, I can actually drag this in a 3D space And how awesome is this in terms of having something that is visually striking like this? I can even do things like increase or decrease the depth of my 3D elements, right? So that's quite simple. But obviously it's showing different data. It's using sample data. So how do we get our data in there from our table that we just used on the last slide? So that's quite easy. Let me show you how to do that. Go back to my table. I'm simply going to click and select the whole table, right? So I'm going to press on Shift, click on the first cell, and then click on the last cell, and I would have selected the whole table. Copy that, so Command C, right? Go to my chart. You'll see right at the bottom, if I have it selected, it says Edit Chart Data. So essentially what I can do now, if I go into that, there's my sample data. I don't want that, so I'm actually just going to delete that, right? So press on Delete. And I've copied the data from my table a few seconds ago. So if I press paste, you can see it'll have that as the new data for my chart. And essentially there we go. We've got the data in there. So that's quite nice, right? In terms of just having a really easy way to get your data into a chart. It makes it quite simple to do. There's another type of chart actually I want to show you. Let me quickly show you this other one. I'm going to change this one actually. If I go to chart, I go right to the bottom, I can actually change my type of, because I've already got my data in there, right? I don't want to redo that all the time. So if I go to the chart option in my format panel, all the way to the bottom, you can see I've got 3D column. So I can actually go and choose the one called interactive column. So this is quite cool, right? So this is something that's new in Keynote, newish. The last couple of versions you've had this. If I choose interactive column, you can see now it shows me not all the data at one time, but I can actually go through there. You can see there's April, there's May, and there's June. So I can actually have this display interactively, right? So it kind of makes it nice for me to actually talk through, let's say, the tourist information for Brazil for those 3 months. And if you play it back, you can have it animate as well. So they'll kind of grow and shrink as you go along. So let's see quickly. Someone's asking if I update the data on slide 14, will it update automatically on 15? So no, in this case, no, I just copied and pasted it. So there's not a live link in this stage between that table and that. If I do it another way, if I actually make my chart from this table directly, so if I have that table selected and I click on the chart tool there, then you actually might have it directly linked like that. Hope that answers that question. So let's move along because we've got, sure, I can't believe how time is flying. We've got a few minutes left, but I do want to show you some awesome things that you can do in Keynote. And we're talking about transitions still in terms of moving between slides. And this time I want to show you something called Magic Move, right? Because it literally is like magic. You can have things move around your presentation like magic. So here's the thing with animations, right? It's usually quite complex. You have to kind of work out where things are going and where they were and what you have to do to make it animate. So Keynote makes it really simple. Let me show you what I mean. So in this case, I hope you guys are still following. We are going to move a little to something else now. So we're done with charts. We're now talking about animation again. Let's say we got a map of the world, as you can see on the screen here. And how I got this, simply I went to my objects option on the top, and you can see there is, if I go to Africa, you can see all the maps that it's literally built in, right? You can actually use all these elements directly from Keynote. So I've got them already. So we're talking about using something called Magic Move to do some awesome animations, right? So let me show you how this works. We got like some shapes on our screen, right? That's nice, but we want to actually have it animate in a way. So how do we do this using Magic Move? Well, what we do is you have a starting slide. In this case, let's say we have America there, we've got Africa, we've got Europe and Asia and Australia. You know, that's going to be our beginning point, which is fine. But what you want to do is you want to duplicate that to have 2 of that. So what I do is I have that slide, go to the left-hand side where all my slides are, and I simply right-click and I say duplicate, right? Because now I've got 2 of the same slide, if you guys agree. Got slide there, 16 and slide 17. You can see they are exactly the same. But what you want to do on your second slide is you want to mix things around, right? You want to move things around. So let's go to my second slide, which is 17, and I'm just going to move America off the screen. I'm going to move Asia and Europe off the screen, and also Australia. I'll move Africa maybe to the side here, and I'm going to make South America nice and big, because essentially we are talking about South America and traveling to South America, right? So I know my scale isn't right here, but hopefully you get the idea. You can even do other things like changing colors. So let's actually go and change colors on there as well. I'm going to maybe choose a gradient fill for that continent. And let's say we go and use, maybe we'll use that same yellow and that same green we had used previously, right? Maybe just for, again, some consistency. And also, I think with the rainforest, maybe that does make sense as well. Anyway, so I hope you'll agree. I did nothing else except for have 2 slides. And on the second slide, which I duplicated from the first, I just move things around. You can change the size, you can change their shape, you can change the opacity, you can change their colors. And then what Keynote will do is actually will animate it for you. So have a look at this. If I go back to my first slide and I want to animate this, so how do I do this? I go to my animation palette. You can see I got no transition, so let's change that. I'm going to click on add an effect. You can see these are all the ones we used some of them before, right? Remember we looked at things like confetti and I think I could remember the mosaic, right? But there's another one there. If you look, and it's actually on its own little section. It's called Magic Move. So let me preview this and you can see what this does. So have a look at this and hold on to your socks, right? So click on preview. You can see everything animates. I hope you saw that, right? Let me play it one more time. Preview. Everything animates, right? Africa moves away, South America comes to the center, the colors change. So that is what I want. I'm going to click on Magic Move one more time to actually have it selected. And obviously you can change the duration. You can change a few things around how you want that to happen. Let us now look at what we want to do from there. So once we got our animation, we're going to go from that slide to this slide. But that's not it, right? Maybe we want to do actually even more. We want to show maybe a little plane flying from, let's say, South Africa to South America, right? So now that we've kind of highlighted the 2 continents that we are talking about, let's actually put a plane on there. So let's see how we do this. So again, we can use our shapes option, all right? And I'm going to insert a shape, and this time just search for something like plane. You can see there's a whole bunch of planes, right? I think this one here looks like a good option. I'm going to go with that one that says just airplane. So there we go. We've got an airplane, right? So essentially we want the plane to fly like all the way from Africa to South America. I think firstly that white color is not going to work. So let me just change that color of that plane real quick to something a little bit more seeable. There we go. And also I'm going to use the range panel just maybe to change the direction of my plane. So they rotate a little bit. There we go. Okay, so how do we do this? How do we get the plane to fly from here to there, right? So essentially we're going to make a string of actions to make it fly where we want it to fly. So for instance, I'm going to go to my animation panel one more time. I'm going to choose action, right? Not build in, not build out, because those are just going to be single actions. We're going to do the one that's called action. So add an effect. Maybe the first thing we want to do is we want to move it, right? It's going to fly up, and I'm going to click on move. So it flies the first, let's say, leg of our flight. Okay, so it flew to Madagascar. That's not quite where we want to go, right? So, but that's easy to fix. All I need to do is I click on that second plane, the smaller one that just appeared, and I just change that, let's say, to the top of Africa here. Let's say we stop over here, north of Africa, for our first stopover. Then what you'll see, and let me just zoom in there a little bit, you'll see there's a little plus sign, right? Which means you can now add more animations to that plane, right? So I click on the plus sign, and this time I need to rotate it because obviously now we're changing direction. We're going to South America. I can use that little inspector again to change the rotation. That looks about good. So it's going to first move, then it's going to turn. I click on the plus sign one more time. I do another move. And I just move it again to the area I want, like there we go, South America. Maybe even there was a storm, right? So we had to miss the storm. So maybe we have a little angle so I can even drag that line to make a curved line. And then maybe I want to have a final animation, which is going to be, if I click on the plus sign one more time, I can say opacity, and I can actually reduce the opacity so the plane will fade out, right? So let's see what that looks like, right? I'm going to preview this. Plane's going to fly. And I can kind of, but actually let's preview the whole thing. So let me show you this as well. If you go to the bottom of the screen, once I've added those 4 animations, you can see it says build order. Is everyone seeing that right? At the bottom it says build order. So actually this is where I can actually make them happen directly after each other versus having me clicking between all of them, right? So build order. I'm simply gonna just drag them on top of each other. So there's the first one, and the second one, and then the fourth one as well. So you can see now they're gonna happen. If I click on it, you can say after build 2, fourth one after build 3, and you can kind of, obviously it depends on how you want to do it, but this time I want to have them all go directly after each other. So simply click on preview. Here's my plane, it flies to North Africa, then it turns around, it flies to South America, and then it fades out, right? That happened quite quickly, so obviously you can change the duration here to make it maybe 2 seconds, 3 seconds, or whatever you are needing to do. So how awesome is this, right? So we had the continents move around, and then we focused in on South America, and then we had a plane, and then it took off from South Africa, went to North Africa, and flew to South America, right? So in terms of just being able to visually show what's happening on your presentation, can you see our Keynote is really just awesome, right? It's really going to give you the tools to do amazing things. So let's look at a few final things in terms of presentations, because there's a few things I still want to touch on, and I know we only have a few minutes left, so let me make this nice and quick, but I think this is nice to see. So firstly, there's a great tool in Keynote which is about collaboration, right? So if you're working together with someone else on a presentation, then you can collaborate on the same presentation essentially. So how do I do this? If I go to my menu bar, you'll see right on the top, there's a little icon that looks like a little person in a silhouette with a circle with a plus sign, right? So what this does, it allows me to add people to my presentation. So this will use iCloud, and I can now actually send them a mail, I can send them a message, I can copy that link. But essentially, as soon as I have a link, I can send this to someone and they can start working on the same presentation at the same time, right? And also you can do this live. So literally I can see someone else moving things around as I'm also maybe on that same slide. So it's really awesome. But there's 2 more things I want to show you before we kind of end off the session. So first one is about playback. So what's really important about delivering an amazing presentation is obviously being quite slick in terms of knowing your presentation and practicing it enough to make sure that you can really rehearse that presentation enough to be great at presenting it. We're not talking so much today about presenting, we're not talking about the tool. Maybe we'll have another one at another stage about presenting. But for you to kind of be really good at this, what you can do is if you go to the view menu, if you look on your screen, or my screen rather, right on the top, you'll see there's a little option that says play, right? So it'll play my presentation, but there's also one that says rehearse slideshow, right? So essentially what you can do is you can actually then see the timing, you can see how long it takes, you can try, you can get all the transitions and everything exactly right. So you can actually be great at presenting as well. But there's another option there, and this is really what I want to show you, is there's this thing called record slideshow. So this is literally one of the best things, right? So check this out. What you can do is you can actually record your slideshow. So I'm going to go to a different slide, maybe just so we can go back a little bit. Let's go to our magic move, and I want to start recording there, just to show you 1 or 2 slides, but obviously you can do the whole thing. So I'm going to go and say play, record slideshow, right? And then you should see your screen change to, like, hopefully everyone is still seeing this, because I'm not sure if this shows on the Zoom side as well. Maybe quickly raise your hand if you're seeing. There we go. Okay, cool. So here you can see a few things, right? So you can see my notes, I can see my slides, and I can see also the current slide and the next slide. So check this out, guys. This is amazing. If I click on record at the bottom, I can then actually record my voice and the exact timing I want to make this presentation go through slide to slide. So let me click on the record button. It's going to count me in. So we are going to Brazil. So how do we get to Brazil? We need to fly over. So firstly, let's look at where Brazil is. And you can see, there we go. We've just moved our continents around. And now we are going to fly from South Africa all the way to Brazil. And there we go. Our plane is flying. I'm just going to stop that, exit this. So essentially, right, I don't think you guys saw the animations there because it doesn't play back in that view. Essentially, you can voice over your presentation, right, with all the animations, with all the cool effects we've done today. And you can then take all of that and essentially, let's go to our next slide here. you can export all of that as something. So once you've recorded it, for instance, if I go back to play, you can see now it says play recorded slideshows. Actually, it'll play back exactly what we just did in terms of the voiceover. If you wanted to add music, you can do that, but essentially think about going to something like YouTube. You can make this amazing presentation, right? But maybe there's no one to watch it. So what you can do is you can put it on YouTube. So what I can do in that case, I'm going to go File, and I'm going to choose Export, right? And you can see there's an option there that says Movie. So essentially, once you've made a recording, you can save your presentation as a movie. You can see I can do like a 720, or I can do a full HD version if I want, or even custom, right? If you want to go bigger than that. And you can also do the recording, which is the one we just made. And if I save that, essentially, it's going to allow me to save it as a QuickTime movie, which I can then upload to something like YouTube or Vimeo or wherever else you might want to upload your presentation to. How awesome, right? Not only that, you can also save it as a PowerPoint. So you can see I've got an option to save this as a PowerPoint. So what's great about this, it's fully compatible. So I can make my presentation in Keynote and then save it as a PowerPoint. You just need to be aware that PowerPoint doesn't support everything we've seen today, right? So for instance, remember right in the beginning, we had maybe that Brazil animate in with a very nice effect where it kind of drew in the lines, so PowerPoint doesn't support that. So you'll still have the text, you'll still have the slide, but instead of doing that nice animation where it kind of draws in, it'll maybe just appear with a very PowerPointy style animation, right? So it'll still be there. You might just lose some of the nice Keynote style animations. So yeah, talking about also making sure that you can play back your presentation and rehearse it and then actually deliver it. If anyone has an iPhone as well, so let's say you have a Mac and an iPhone, or a Mac and an iPad, or even an iPad and an iPhone, you can actually use the other devices as your remote control. So simply what you need to do is download the Keynote app. It should actually be there already, but if it's not, you can download it for free. And then once you're in the Keynote app, let's say on your iPhone, you can actually use that as a remote for your Mac, right? So imagine this, you're walking around the room using your phone to flip through, but also you can use your phone to look at the presenter notes. How awesome is this? So you can see what notes you made for yourself. So as you're going through your presentation, you don't have to go back to your computer to see like, what should I say here? Let's do that directly on your phone or on your iPad, right? So some really awesome options in terms of delivering great presentations. So wow, that was a lot of stuff I think we covered today. So I think maybe a lot for an hour. So if maybe you missed one or two things, then you're welcome to join us another time. And we will run the session pretty much once a week. So you're welcome to join us again. But hopefully that helps everyone in terms of just seeing the power of Keynote and how you can do really awesome presentations by using the tools that's already on your Mac, on your iPad, on your iPhone. Right. So again, a couple of things we need to think about is keeping it simple, using very cinematic effects, but also not overdoing it. And then using some of the tools we played with today in terms of our images and our text and our objects, right? And graphs and tables and magic moves and all these things you can do to build and put together an awesome presentation that you can use for school or for work and for business, or maybe even for YouTube, like we've seen. So I think with all of that said, we are pretty much done with the session. So I'm really glad everyone was able to join us today. So thank you for attending. I hope you learned something. I hope you can use this to make awesome presentations. We will be on the chat line for a little bit longer. So if anyone has got any additional questions, we will be happy to try and answer all of those for you. But anything else the last thing I can say here rather is thank you for joining, and we will see you another time. Thank you, everybody. It's been awesome, and goodbye.